everyone. My name is Crystal Willis. I'm a policy analyst here at Kentucky Youth Advocates. I just wanted to thank you all so much for taking time to join us today. We're really excited to have this discussion with you all about what you can do in your own community to help those who have been impacted by incarceration. Kentucky Youth Advocates and the Kentucky Social Welfare Foundation undertook this project to understand how jails currently interact with children and families who have been impacted by incarceration, and to learn more about the community interest in and capacity to increase the use of child-friendly practices. Kentucky Youth Advocates surveyed community members and stakeholders around the state to assess local jails' practices and policies regarding parental incarceration. The survey was shared across various networks throughout Kentucky, and today we are super excited to share with you all that we released our report on supporting children with incarcerated parents. In this report, we highlight some communities that are doing the wonderful work for children and their families within their community. Today, we're going to hear from a few of these advocates during our panel later on, but first I wanted to introduce to you all Ann Eason, the chair of the Kentucky Social Welfare Foundation's board. In 2018, the Kentucky Social Welfare Foundation chose to focus its grant-making efforts on children of incarcerated parents. And as they learned more and more about the large percentage of children in Kentucky who have been impacted by this, they knew they wanted to make as big of an impact as they could. And so the work with KYA was started. In addition to the report that we're highlighting today, they also supported the creation of a resource document for parents and caregivers on tips, resources, and conversation starters that can also be found on KYA's website. The Kentucky Social Welfare Foundation has been a great partner in this work to support children with incarcerated parents, and we deeply appreciate their focus on this work. So with that, all that being said, Anne, would you like to I'd like to invite you to share a little bit more about the Kentucky Social Welfare Foundation and all the work that you all do.
Sure, it's a pleasure to be here today to represent the Kentucky Social Welfare Foundation and to see so many of you with this interest in this problem here in Kentucky. It's just wonderful. So I do serve as the chair of the foundation, and I will say the foundation was established in 1948 by a Kentucky social worker. Her name was Martha Davis. She inherited a sizable estate from her parents who lived in New York. And she chose to use her inheritance to establish this foundation that we call the Kentucky Social Welfare Foundation. The mission under which we operate was described by her. We focus our grants on rural parts of the state, small towns, and areas of special need. Since 1991, the last time we've been able to gather our data, since 1991, that's over 31 years, we have distributed almost $3.5 million across the state in close to 400 grants. Our grants are typically small and tend to go to small nonprofits, but as you can see, they really add up. Our grants over the years have gone to projects as diverse as you can possibly imagine, everything from food banks to homeless shelters to building supplies to health centers to women's centers, you name it, we have funded it. But around 2018, we got the grant, the smallest grant I ever remember us being asked for, $1,000. This organization in a rural part of the state asked us for $1,000 for them to establish a reading program where incarcerated parents would read a book, record it, and then they would provide a copy of that book to that inmate's child. They asked us for $1,000. We would have given them $10,000 if they had asked for it. That was the lowest amount that we've ever been asked for that I know of, and it was the grant that really stuck in our mind. And so around that same time, we started to consider becoming more focused in our grant making. And as we learned more about the size and scope of the children of incarcerated parents here in Kentucky, we worked hard to educate ourselves. We brought in some subject matter experts from across the state to help us understand the problem better. And as we learned more about just how large this issue was, we wanted to do something to try to impact it. And so we chose to focus on one specific aspect of it, which is the issue of improving the conditions of visitation between parents and children in the local jails. And because of some of our previous work with Kentucky Youth Advocates, we decided to collaborate with them on the project. So together with our funding and KYA's hard work, We're supporting and developing some pilot sites around the state to improve parent-child visitation in the jails. And also we hope that these can become models and teachers for other jails in Kentucky. So we are investing in this one specific part of the problem, but I'm sure this webinar is going to give you and me many other ideas about ways that we can work as Kentuckians to improve the conditions for these vulnerable Kentucky children and families. We are so grateful for the work of all of the KYA staff and for the partnership we have developed with them. It's how we like to spend our money. We like to see outcomes from the money with which we're entrusted, and we are grateful for the work of KYA. And I invite any of you who are listening today, go to our website, kswf.org, learn more about our work. If you happen to work for a nonprofit that has a compelling project that you would like to develop in the future, please reach out to us. We're always looking for new applicants from across the state to serve the needs of Kentuckians. Thank you again for giving me a moment to speak, and I look forward to hearing the rest of the webinar.
Thanks, Anne. It's so good to have you with us today. Now I'm going to turn it over to my coworker, Corinna Cash, to give us a little presentation and tell us a little bit more about the findings in our report.
Awesome. Thanks, Crystal. Hi, everyone. Like Crystal mentioned, my name is Corinna Cash, and I am going to be walking through some of the findings that some of the report findings on how jails and communities are supporting children with incarcerated parents. First off, can everybody see the screen? Okay, awesome. Thanks. So first off, we're going to talk who responded to our survey, and the answer is a lot of people. We got over 200 responses from every region of the state, and from people from a wide variety of sectors and backgrounds and experience with the criminal justice system. So all the counties you see here in green on the map, these are counties where we got responses. As you can see, we got Western, Eastern, Central, Northern Kentucky. We have Louisville and Lexington. So overall, we got 54% of all counties, including 60% of all counties with a local jail. And one thing I will call out that was super exciting is we expected to get a lot of responses from counties like Jefferson and Fayette due to their population. However, we also got some really strong responses from rural communities. For example, in Mason and Perry County, we both got over 10 responses. Looking at occupations, we got folks from a wide variety of, like I said, experiences with the criminal justice system, occupations, including folks in nonprofits, attorneys, the family resource counselors that work in schools, folks who work in corrections, whether that's they work in jail or they are the jailer. And the one that excited me the most was we got a lot of representation from folks with lived experience, whether that's they were incarcerated themselves or they have experience with visiting. And I also want to give a huge shout out to that one, to Judy Jennings, who's on this call, who did a really, really awesome job at connecting us to those folks and to those groups. And it's done a lot of really awesome criminal justice work in general. So looking at the next slide, I'm going to walk through some of the resources we found that counties were providing to parents. That these resources were provided by the jails. So the most common resource we saw provided was programming. And the programming we saw offered were things like parenting classes, substance abuse and disorder treatment classes, and also GED, continued education programming. Some of the other programming that we asked about and resources that we asked about that aren't included on this slide include were jails giving information to parents at any point in their incarceration about how they can stay connected to their kids. We found that 13 counties were providing this information at some point during their incarceration, with 9 counties providing that whenever families are first incarcerated. Other things we asked about are child-friendly waiting rooms. Do you have things like books and toys and child-friendly spaces that kids who are waiting to see their parents can play in? And we found 7 counties reported as having that type of support. We also asked about in-person visitings. Are kids allowed to go see their incarcerated parent? And 30 counties said yes, they do offer in-person visiting. However, only 7 of those counties allowed contact visits, so allowing kids to hug their parents and spend time with their parents without some type of physical divide between them. From counties that did not offer in-person visiting, one thing we heard quite a few times is that while they don't offer in-person visiting, they do offer phone and video calls. So we were really curious about whether or not families had to pay for that, because we know that can be a pretty significant financial barrier for families, as the average phone call Average 15-minute phone call in the state of Kentucky is $11.30. And we found that only 6 counties reporting that families did not have to pay for those phone and video calls. So in every other county, families were paying that amount. Next, we asked a lot about how community partners are working with jails to support children of incarcerated parents. And we found that there's a lot of really, really great work already happening in communities and in jails. So as you see here, over 20 communities reported that they are providing educational classes or some type of therapy for families. Over 10 community organizations reported that they are donating books and toys to impacted families or helping support their practical needs, such as how do I navigate incarceration? How do I navigate the visiting process, to also their financial and emotional needs with things like we mentioned, the therapy piece, and also financial help. And while all those are really great supports, one thing we were also really interested in knowing the cost of phone and visiting calls, is whether or not organizations were supporting parents' financial needs through helping pay for calls or transportation to and from the jail. And we found that that was one of the least offered supports available. So looking overall through the report, we had a couple of big picture takeaways. The first one is that there is a lack of common understanding of practice and perceptions. We would have respondents from the same county report that some respondents would say, yes, this county is offering this, and others would say they don't know. And so while there is a lot of interest in the issue around how jails are supporting parents, there wasn't always the same common level of understanding. This included to professions and folks who work directly in jails. For example, we saw attorneys that weren't quite sure how jails were supporting incarcerated parents. The next overall takeaway, like I mentioned, is that there were a lot of folks who were really, really interested in supporting these kids and supporting these families. However, they don't know exactly what's happening in jails or how they can plug in. So through the survey, we found that 53% of respondents wanted to do more to support kids, and 26% said they would be interested if more funding was available. However, there were a lot of these folks who were interested didn't understand how parents and kids were currently being connected in the jail. They didn't know what type of resources other communities were offering or how to get involved and plugged in. The next one, like we mentioned on the last slide, is that community partners were really, really crucial to sustaining and leading this work. In almost every single county where really, really great work was happening, a community partner was working directly with the jail in collaboration to make that happen. We're going to hear from some of those really great community partners, such as Wendy Hall, in a minute on our panel to learn more about how community partners specifically are getting involved. But overall, they were absolutely crucial to this work in communities. And then the final takeaway that we had was that support for children of incarcerated individuals doesn't just include visiting. Whenever we went into this survey and into this report, we were really, really looking at visiting and how visiting looked throughout the state of Kentucky. However, we found that there are so many different ways and opportunities for folks to support children of incarcerated parents and incarcerated parents in this connection that don't involve visiting at all, that are just as impactful and meaningful for kids and family. And like I said, one really great example will be Wendy Hall in our panel, where you can learn more about some of the ways programs can be adapted to support kids and families in really meaningful ways. And finally, looking at this report and looking at how communities currently were supporting kids and families, we want to provide some action steps on ways to, community organizations and jails can deepen support for children and families. So the first one is to learn about your local practice. Like we said, there's a lot of misunderstandings and discrepancies in how folks view the services offered in jails. So learning what is your jail offering to support kids and families? Are there programs offered by community partners? Are there things schools are doing to support kids? The next are identifying project opportunities within existing resources. So looking at the programming you already have, are there ways you can target that programming specifically for children of incarcerated parents or for incarcerated parents themselves? For example, if you offer parenting classes, is there ways you can target those parenting classes for incarcerated individuals? The next one is to seek alternative funding for jail programming. This is particularly important, as we mentioned, for those phone calls. One of the reasons we were commonly told about the phone calls is that that's one of the few funding sources that jails have. So finding alternative funding to offer a new program, to offer those free phone calls and video calls can be really impactful and help not only provide more program, but also reduce the financial barrier of incarceration. The next is to get to know your local jailer and initiate conversations. We found that a lot of jailers were really interested in finding ways to support kids and families and to support incarcerated parents, but they just didn't know how. So getting to know your local jailer, asking them about the supports they already had available, and also collaborating with them to think through additional supports you all can work together to provide for kids, families, and incarcerated individuals. The next one is identifying multiple pathways for sharing information. Throughout this project, we found that information was being shared through jails, through Facebook groups, through schools, through community partners. So thinking through, where is information about parental connection and incarceration being provided in your community, and what avenues aren't we tapping into? Are friskies in your community properly equipped with this information? Are there Facebook groups in your community where you could be sharing this? The next one is that community members can offer training, and jails are usually really receptive and excited about this training. They have limited resources themselves and are generally really excited about additional resources they can provide. So like I mentioned earlier on the parenting classes example, if you have parenting classes, thinking of ways, can you offer them to folks who are incarcerated individuals? Can you offer training to parents who are parents of incarcerated individuals? And then finally, collaborating to support contact visits. We know there's practical community safety reasons why folks don't offer contact visits. So working with your local jailer to find that balance between keeping parental connection during incarceration and also keeping in mind public safety. We found that there's jailers across the state who have found this balance. So working with your jailer to really find that balance and how we can keep in mind public safety and the needs of kids and families. And with that, that is all of my presentation, and I will pass it over to Tara.
Thank you, Corinna, for that overview. And I'm going to introduce our panelists now, and then we'll jump right into asking some questions so that you all can hear about some of the exciting work that's taking place out across our state. We're going to have Wendy Hall share information with us. She's the program coordinator at Save the Children and works with the Kentucky River Regional Jail in Perry County. I believe we have a parent who's going to be with you, Wendy. If you see her on here, though, let me know. I couldn't see her name, so we'll see if she was able to jump on here and join us. We have Mr. Dale Robinson, who's with the Wanda Joyce Robinson Foundation that's located in Franklin County. And then we have Mr. Jason Woosley, who is the Grayson County jailer. And I was going to start maybe a little bit differently, but after hearing all of those things, and I kept thinking to myself, like, this doesn't describe Mr. Woosley and what he does in Grayson County. So I might actually kick it off with you, if you don't mind, Jason, to share a little bit about what you see in terms of the value of in-person contact and the visits with families, and just sharing a little bit about how you operate the jail. I think a lot of what you're doing is, like I said, different from some of those recommendations we had. It's great to have outliers and examples of places doing great work. So if you don't mind kicking us off, and then we'll jump to Wendy and to Dale for some information about how they're doing work in their communities.
Sure. We're a small community in central Kentucky. We're fortunate in the way that we have a lot of churches located in our county. So we have, on the volunteer side, we have, well, prior to COVID, we were pushing about 200 volunteers that would come into our facility at different times and teach classes anywhere from, or assist us to teach in teaching classes, anywhere from a one-on-one Bible study to a 30-person classroom about whatever the particular topic is. So we're fortunate in that most jails don't always have that much activity that they have access to. And then also we're a little bit of a hybrid from most jails across the state. We house a large number of federal inmates, which we have revenue from, which gives us extra funding to spend back on programs and whatnot for the inmates. So we're just a little bit different than everybody else. our programs department is very large, and I myself have always been an advocate of family ties and keeping in touch with parents and children and relatives across the board with the inmates and their families, so that I believe that's an important connection that they have to change the thought process, to change the recidivism rate, to keep them from reoccurring crimes and coming back into the facility. Our local population is very small. We have on average about 70 to 75 county inmates. Our largest population is federal inmates, which today I think is about 455. And then the remainder of those are state inmates. Most of our programs is focused on the state inmates, which are from all across the state, every area in the state. And a lot of them are from the eastern side of the state. I'm not sure why that is, but we tend to get more from that area than we do the western side. So most of our programs are focused around the state inmates because they benefit the most from it. They get, besides the benefit of having the connections with their families, they get actual time knocked off their sentence for completing some of the programs that we give. So we try to teach as many programs that they can benefit from that side of it, as well as hopefully a correction side that they're making and keeping those contacts with their families, whether it be kids or parents or grandparents or whatnot. So we teach GED, AANA. We have 20-bed substance abuse program, DUI, Portal New Direction, which is a religious-based program, Inside Out Dads, which is a religious-based program, MRT, which within MRT, that's moral recognition training. There are several subjects within that, which include all the ones that I've just listed. NCRC, which is a National Career Readiness Certificate. We have a parenting class, anger management, Exodus, which is a religious-based program. Making Peace with Your Past, which is also religious-based, which focuses heavily on family. English is a second language. Celebrate Recovery, which is religious-based. Getting Your Life on Target, another religious-based. We're like everybody else. We suffer the effects of COVID. So our volunteer levels have dropped about probably close to 50% because of that. So we're hoping once we get past the holidays this year that those things will start getting back in place. And we're suffering the same things that everybody else is with staffing levels. So that's affected our programs department somewhat because we're sometimes having to pull staff to work in other places. So, but we run a large programs department. And like I said, I think it's important to have that connection with kids. We do not do the video visitation for that reason. I think it's important to have that face-to-face contact, even if it's behind a glass. It has more effect than watching someone through a video. You all know how it is to keep a kid's attention sometimes, and if that connection's not there, then it makes it even more difficult. And I think it has more effect on the inmate himself to see that child, even if it's behind a glass, than definitely through a video visitation. And there's that expense to it. Those things are pricey and for the families, and we don't want to add that extra burden to them if we can keep from it. On the security side, they're better because you don't have as many people in and out of your facility. But I think the other side of that outweighs the security side, and it's more important. So that's just my thought process with it. I'm just one jailer in the state, but we've been pretty successful with how we do our programs here. You want to have any questions?
Thank you so much for sharing that overview. And that was something that definitely struck me when we spoke, when you gave an interview with me, just so we could hear more about what you're doing, that you really valued those contact visits, in-person visits, and didn't move to video because of that connection. So I appreciate you weighing in. I'd like to turn to Wendy now and doing too many things at once on my screen. See if you can share a little bit about how your program got started, tell a little bit about what that work looks like. And I believe you have a parent with you if you'd like to introduce her and have her jump in as well.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and introduce the parent. It's Tiffany Higgins, and she's on here. She brings her 2 little girls to visit her dad, who is incarcerated. So she can tell you guys about that. But anytime you want to jump in, Tiffany, just go ahead. So I got started when I wanted to, when I got the idea to begin at the jail. I was a home visitor with early steps. So I was like way outside of my realm. But I asked my boss if I could, is it possible, you know, and she said, yeah, go, you can try. So all I did was call, and I got in a meeting with my jail administrator. And I've been doing this for 4 years, which the visiting program just got started in late March, early April. But the jail administrator, when I very first started, it was parenting sessions. They wrote letters to their kids. We did a little bit of parenting classes, things like that. So it's kind of evolved over time to the visiting program. But the jail administrator, he previously worked with juvenile, so he really understands the importance. So he has yet to tell me no on any of my crazy ideas. He may say, like, let's tweak it and make it work, but he hasn't said no yet.
Tiffany, I think you might be muted. Let's see if we can get that taken care of.
Hear me now?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
sorry about that.
That's okay.
Hi, I'm Tiffany. This is Sylvia. She
Hello.
comes to the visits. And we're really glad for the program. We think it's awesome. Me personally, anything to help kids in the state of Kentucky, I'm all for. I'm really grateful. This has been a wonderful way for my father to be a grandparent. Since he is currently incarcerated, it's very limited on the contact he can have with him. And actually, it's the only way he's ever been able to actually see Sylvia since she's been born.
Thank you for sharing that.
So we're a little cranky.
That's all right. So, Mr. Robinson, maybe we can turn to you now. And I know you all do a lot of amazing work with the foundation. One of the things we featured was the work you all do around the holidays to help families celebrate the holidays together. So maybe you can focus on that, but share the other great work you're doing too, please.
Well, I'm actually one of those parents that was incarcerated. So, you know, and my dad was incarcerated as well when I was younger. You know, I left 2 boys out to fend for themselves, and I spent 10 years in federal prison. I was only to see my youngest son twice within the last 7 years, and I see my oldest son 0. So I only had phone calls to be able to make sure that I kept that relationship with my kids. I didn't have video. I didn't get no contact visits. So I got out in 2015, and, you know, I started rebuilding and restoring my relationship with my kids, both of my boys. And then I ended up starting the gym in my garage. And then a woman that I actually went to school with, and we kind of like was in the same neighborhoods and stuff like that. We started the Warren Joyce Robinson Foundation in 2018 in Starbucks. You know, we didn't have a plan. We didn't know where we was going. I just told her, like, listen, I want to start a foundation because I've seen so many dads when I was in prison that, you know, kids was left without a dad. So she was like, let's do it, you know, and we didn't have a real plan, but then we just started like reaching out to people in our community. And we had this one meeting, you know, we had a lot of people in our community like jump on board. You know, we don't have no funding. We just make it work. So in 2018, we started, and then we actually started building with this group called Crush. So I'm gonna get that Crush first because Crush is very important for us. So Crush is an acronym, means Kids Rising Up Through Support and Healing which is led by two ladies, which we actually go into the schools and educate the educators on kids that have parents incarcerated. So, and we also have a program with them from K through 12 that we actually get those kids into our program from the early age all the way to their high school. So we can kind of grab a hold of them, and, and help them with that trauma and, that emotional and that mental aspect of their parents being incarcerated. But as far as the jailer, we have a great relationship with the jailer here in Frankfurt. We actually have contact visits with our inmates and our kids. They're allowed to sit with their parents for a while. But before then, I go and I speak to the parents first. And they also have to keep a good conduct to be able to get that contact visit, so it gives them some kind of benefit to like start doing programs, get their life on track, because they have to understand, like, if they go back out there to the kids, they actually have to be stable and have the right mindset and be able to be productive to be able to stay on the streets with their kids. Because if they keep going back and forth into prison, then they actually are going to create more trauma for these kids, and they keep saying, well, I love my kid. Well, are you going to do the right things to make sure that you stay home with your kids so you can show that you love them? So we have a great relationship with them. And on Christmas last year, we was able to set up tables and food and presents, and the inmates actually got to came and sit and have actual Christmas dinner with their kids. They had presents and all that type of stuff. They have their own Christmas tree. And we were supposed to do it in 2020, but COVID actually took that down, and we did it this last year, and it was a great success. None of the officers was in police clothes; they was in normal clothes, so they can have like a normal experience with their kids, which is very important. We also provide kids or families with gas cards to go see their loved ones that's incarcerated, or we do host video calls through a company that's actually is part of our foundation. It's called GTL. We have a designated person that actually sets up the times with the calls for the kids and the parents, because some people might not be able to go actually see their loved ones, and a video call might just as good as sometimes as having that connection or be able to touch someone, because hey, I need to see your face. Because I know what it's like, because I didn't get to see my kid's face for 7 years, except through pictures, and I'm very big on contact visits as well, because, just that hug or just having your kid tell you love them or you love them, it could do so much for a kid. Because I had to tell my son that I was going to be gone for 10 years through a glass, and I wouldn't be able to hug him the last time, and he started crying. And actually that was a switch for me to actually change my life. And the One George Robinson Foundation is named after my late mother, who's somebody that really took care of kids when she worked at Kentucky State University. So that's why the One George Robinson Foundation is named after her. And we also have a scholarship named after a big advocate for us when we very first started, named Adam Hyatt. So we have the Adam Hyatt Scholarship Fund, where a kid gets I think over $1,000 every semester, but they got to keep a certain GPA. They have to write a letter, explaining why they should receive this scholarship. What else do we do? We have a lot of social workers on hand to deal with kids with trauma and mental health issues, and we have a high school outreach program that we have really kicked into, where we have these mentors where they have small groups and they mentor these high school kids, and every mentor is designated maybe I think 15 kids. They have a caseload or workload, and we just we try to give them as much possible way to be successful regardless of the situation that was their mom or their dad went through. We try to make sure, let them know you're special, you have a gift, you have a purpose in this world, and that is our duty. And we want to break the generational curse from people keep going to prison, because it says 80% of the kids go to prison if their parents go to prison, and we will not let that happen.
Thank you so much for sharing that story, your personal story, and also how Wanda Joyce Robinson is working with kids and families. I do want to just pause for 1 second and remind people that if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please put it in the chat and we'll see if we're going to try and get some questions towards the end of the webinar. I'd like to hear just a little bit more, Mr. Robinson, if you don't mind jumping in again and just sharing, like, how did that connection get started with you with the jailer? I know you all work really well with the jailer now. How did y'all get that underway? Because I think we hear from people that some of them don't have that relationship yet. So what do you have to share about how to get that started? I bet others can jump in too.
It's kind of funny we have a relationship because it's one that we kind of played football together. When I played football, I was in high school. We played against each other, and I've been knowing him basically all my life. But also just reaching out and reaching out and asking him, hey, can we start this program here? And I think he actually reached out to us because I really think he knew that it was a need for kids to have that connection with their parents. And we was all on board for it, and we just had to figure out the logistics of it, to make sure that it was safe and make it work for both ends. But one thing that the jailers do at Franklin County is that when parents get incarcerated, we give them they get a sheet from the jailer and ask them, do they have kids, and can they write down the caregiver's phone number and name and stuff like that. And we get that, and we get to reach out to those kids so we can get those kids into our program so we can kind of get them started early. So it's just been a great success being actually connected to Franklin County's regional jail, and they are so hands-on and they are so invested into the Warren Joseph Robinson Foundation, and it makes things a lot easier when everybody's on the right page and everybody's on board about let's make a change.
Thank you. Mr. Woosley, I wonder if you might add what you would suggest people do if they wanted to reach out to a jailer where they don't have a relationship yet. And if you have anything you'd like to share about how you have built and deepened and strengthened those connections with the community, that would be great to share as well.
Well, like he said, reaching out is the most important part of it. And it's also on the jailer to do that too. So I'm very community oriented. I'm involved in social committees and whatnot. So I have a good connection with everyone locally. Of course, politics plays a role in that too. So you get to know everybody when you're politicking, which is a plus too. You see a lot of faces that way. So I made a lot of connections. I've been in the business now here at the detention center for 21 years. So I've got to know a lot of people over the years. And our program's been in place for about as long as I've been here. And, each jailer that's come along prior to me has tweaked it in their own way. And I hope that I've added some positive to it also. But it's important to stay connected with the community. And locally with us, like I said earlier, we do it mostly with our churches. Our churches are very active in this community, and they pretty much every one of them, especially the larger churches, are very outgoing. They're connected, they're active across the board with the community. There's a lot of outreach in this county, and we're connected with that with our work program, which is our state inmates that have access to contact visits, which is the ones that benefit the most from contact or having visits with their children. But those guys get to go out and work in the community. So they make connections also with local people here through our food pantry. We have several that works for the city of Litchfield, and there's just connections across the board with those, and being involved and making those relationships with everyone is high priority in making a good program work.
Thank you for sharing that. And let's see, Wendy, if you have any tips about what you worked on in terms of how you approached the jailer at the beginning. It sounds like he understood that relationship from some of his prior work, but any thoughts on how you approached or anything you want to share on how you approached the jailer?
Yeah, I just called the jail. I really didn't think that I was going to get to him, or I didn't think it was going to happen the way that it did. I just called the jail and I asked if I could get a meeting with him, and I got it, I think it was a couple of days later. So it's easier than I ever imagined.
Hopefully it is that easy for everybody when they go and approach their jailer after this call, or if you've tried it. I was going to turn next to you, Wendy, again, and to Tiffany, if you all could share a little bit about what kind of impact you see with the kids and families that you're working with from being able to have that connection. What have you seen as the visiting part of your program has kicked off, Wendy?
So I've seen relationships be built from the ground up, from nothing. And I've got to see excited kids and excited family members come in to see their incarcerated person. I notice it makes a big difference for the incarcerated person. It seems to brighten them up a little bit and give them a little bit of hope. But some of these relationships wouldn't happen at all if it weren't for these visits. And, we do have the glass barrier, but we are working towards in-person visits eventually. We don't know if or when, but, that's a goal for me and the jail administration. But I think you see a lot of, good strides, I guess, with this kind of work.
And I wonder, Tiffany, if you'd be able to share a little bit about what impact you've seen with your kids, but also what is it, maybe share with us just what it's like to go visit. I don't know if you ever visited a jail prior to the program being in place, but I think Wendy has transformed the visiting area a little bit to make it more comfortable and welcoming for kids. So maybe you could share a little bit about that too.
Yes, of course. I actually do have experience visiting before this. Used to, you could go there and visit inmates, and it was a very cold and just, bland place. There was cold metal stools and many stalls. Many people be there visiting. My dad, unfortunately, has been in and out of jail a lot. So now it's very colorful. There's like a little reading circle, some chairs, a bookcase full of colorful books. My daughter loves going. I always tell her when we're going to visit. She's 5, and she misses her papa very much. She did have a relationship, before he was incarcerated this last time, and for her, it's how she sees her papa Butch. And she loves being read to anyways, but she especially loves going and seeing him because that is like, their only time together. Like Lindy said, there's a plexiglass there between us. I know he would love to have in-person visits too eventually, if possible. But they've transformed the area wonderfully. It's beautiful. Somebody come and painted some beautiful murals, like a jungle mural. And we love going. I think my kids are getting a lot up from it. Like I said, she enjoys going. She enjoys seeing her papa. I think it brings him hope, keeps him positive, something to look forward to. It really, he does other programs as well, like you all were mentioning, inside the jail, recovery program and GED classes, things like that. So for me, I've noticed a big difference this time during this incarceration. It might be because it's older, it might be because of all these wonderful programs. Either or, I'm happy to see the change, and I'm hoping that this is going to continue to positively impact my family.
That's great to hear, and thank you for sharing that. Mr. Robinson, how about you sharing what you have seen with kids and families that are connected to the program? Do you have anything else you'd want to add to that from the examples of all the work you've done?
Well, as far as like some of the inmates, I've definitely have heard, because I mean, one of the people that actually run the visits actually is part of our foundation as well. She's on our board. She's like, there's a couple of guys that actually have changed their whole attitude especially after the Christmas party, well, Christmas dinner that we had. Like a couple of guys actually have really changed their attitude towards, just getting on board, doing things they need to do, taking GED classes. And I think they have this one class where it's like about mindset and stuff like that. So they have really like jumped into that. And I really feel like it has helped some people restore their faith in themselves. Some people lose hope within themselves when they get incarcerated, but then when you see your kids, it's like, okay, I restore this because I have someone that is looking up to me and someone that still loves me regardless if I'm incarcerated or not. And then like we have two kids that actually went to speak with us through LRC. We had a meeting with LRC, which is the Legislative Research Committee, where we are actually we're in the process, I hate saying trying, we're in the process of forming a Bill of Rights for kids that have parents incarcerated. And these two individuals, a boy and a girl, they was brothers and sisters, and you can see just from being in our program how much more confident they are about themselves and how much more how eloquent they speak about everything that they got going on.
That's great to hear that observation of change that you have seen, both with those who are incarcerated, but also with the kids. And
I believe it's both ways.
Mm-hmm.
It goes both ways. Like for my situation where is me seeing my kids and finally understanding like, hey, you have to become better for your boys to show them what a man is supposed to be. Or even if a woman, show them what a woman is really supposed to be, like however it's supposed to be, whichever it goes. Like that was my shift, is seeing my kids and seeing the emotion and how much I affected and impacted them. It actually helped me change my life. And also I used my situation to be honest with them and make sure that they don't go down the same route that I went. And they actually became very successful young men now.
Mm-hmm. If I might add on to my question, you reminded me of something that we've seen a little bit about, and it was about how that relationship can impact kids in terms of their schooling or their behavior or things like that. So have you seen that kind of experience where the being able to stay connected has had a positive impact?
Yes. What is the kid's name? I can't think of the kid's name. Well, there's one kid that actually has done a whole lot better in school since actually the visit, because we have GTL visits, and they actually have done better in school. They're not getting in trouble no more. They're not getting notes at home, and they're not getting kicked out of school and things like that. So I mean, I just truly believe that visitations and having these programs and having these jailers or even just prisons, period, making it accessible for these inmates or people that's locked up to have that contact or that even just that visit, period. Visit is very important because it gives you a chance also to restore and repair a relationship that was broken, from maybe they seen you get locked up or, they've been asking where you've been at, and you give a chance to actually to be honest. And the more they see you, the more chance you can restore and repair, and they can build that trustworthiness back into y'all's relationship. Mm-hmm. Because in my situation, I always was honest with my kids, why I went to prison, what I did, but also on the flip side of that, I also shared them like what was my goals, what my dream was when I did get out. And the beauty is that everything I told him has come true.
Mm. That is great. Oh, go ahead, please.
No, I'm done. I can be on all day. I'm done.
All right. Well, I was going to turn to Mr. Woosley and see if you have anything to add on that whole perspective of how that connection, whether it's in person or video visits or whatever connection it is, how that impacts people who are incarcerated. I know in looking at research on best practices and things, you can read about this, but I think everybody would like to hear, it's always good to hear that it works and that, the experience of somebody here in Kentucky who's been doing it.
So yeah, it definitely works, and it's different for everyone. But it works on both sides. It's not just the children's side. It affects the parent as well that's incarcerated. And that's what we hope to accomplish, is that, like I said, we change that mindset that they want to get away from committing the offenses that are getting them rearrested, to spending the time and the effort with raising their families and holding down a job and the things that are important in life. And it definitely makes a difference, having that contact with family, whether it's with kids or spouse or parents or whatever. That connection is very important for both sides, which is why we try to do what we do here. I personally believe that it makes a huge difference to have that connection. And, we talked a little bit about the video stuff, and Dale did too. And that's important if you can't get that connection, to have that access. But we hope to go the extra mile to make it easy for the parents and the children that are on the outside to make that connection with the inmates here at the facility. So the importance of having them see each other face to face and talk to each other, even if it's through glass, well outweighs a video visit. Plus the expense to that video, like I said, we don't want to put that extra burden on the families if we can keep from it, because that can prevent them from making that connection. We currently are working with our state inmates that are in our work program. The state requires us to allow them to have contact visits scheduled. We schedule ours once per week. Most of them are with a spouse or the mother of a child or the father of a child, and the children come with them. Typically, that's what we see with those guys. They are the only ones that in our facility currently that we can handle doing physical contact visits with. So they actually sit down in the same room together at a table. We do also the programs at Christmas time, so they can exchange gifts, or they on holidays they can exchange cards or birthday cards or whatnot. So those things are important, especially for children. And we do see a difference with, I'm not connected with any kids currently that I can remember in the school system that have an incarcerated parent. But we do have one particular inmate right now that has a court order through Family Services to have a once a week visit with his children. And the mother of the children also come with them, although they're not currently together. Maybe that will repair itself in time, but the social worker that helped set that up has told me that it's amazing the difference that she can see in the behavior of the children from the first day they came a couple of months ago to what they're seeing with them now. So I believe, and for sure can say with that particular, I think there's 2 kids that come and visit him. It's made a difference with them for sure. And I'd like to hope and think that with every kid that comes out here that there's some kind of contact that connects with them and makes a change in their life. I don't have any, I can't give you any numbers or anything, but I believe it's very successful to keep that connection.
That's a powerful story to hear from a social worker who's working directly with the kids. Thank you for sharing that. A question did come up in the chat that I might just kick to you if you don't mind, because it's about how you address and handle safety concerns around the request to do in-person visits. I know we talked about this a little bit about it might take a little bit more staff time to do it, but you were saying that it's worth it to you. So can you just share a little bit about what precautions you need to take and maybe how you weigh that against things you would have to do if you were just doing video visits as well, or in comparison, I guess?
Yeah, so with this particular inmate that is getting the child visit weekly, we would pat him down before we put him in the visiting room. The visit is monitored by staff and by video. And then once the visit's over, we have access to the body scanner. So we utilize those, and we also do a strip search. So it does take time. Once the visit's over, it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to get the inmate through the process to get them back into their dorm. And I'm sure sometimes it's a little frustrating to the inmate, but hopefully it's worth it in their eyes to get to have that contact visit. And each facility is different in how they're designed or their staffing levels or whatnot. So everybody will do it just a little bit different, but there has to be some security steps in place, even if it's a community service level state inmate that's allowed to go and work outside. You still have to take that little bit extra effort to make sure your facility's safe, because it's very easy to slip in a contact visit, to slip contraband in, and if you're not active in searching, then you can miss those things very easily.
But if I remember right, you were saying that it was worth it to you to do those.
It is worth it. Like I said,
it.
the benefit from having that visit is well outweighs the security risk, and we're fortunate we have enough staff monitoring them. Is not a problem at all for us. So it's not a huge process. It just takes time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I might open this up to any of you all on the panel, but another question that came in was around supporting services or supportive services for families and kids. For example, if a child might act out after a visit. I feel like I heard from maybe one of you all that you haven't seen that as much, but I might be misremembering. It might have been somebody else we spoke with. But I think just hearing a little bit, what kind of services or supports do you provide around a visit itself? Do you tend to see kids reacting after a visit sometimes? And I will just add in, Mara, I think, has the link to this to drop in, but we did put together a guide with the help of folks from the Wanda Joyce Robinson Foundation and a number of people out across the state who have been personally impacted by incarceration, about ideas for conversations to have with kids before going to a visit or after a visit, and just little tips and things like that, to like practical things that families could do to support kids when they're having a conversation or going to do a visit or deciding whether to go do a visit. So let me go back to my question, since I jumped in with that report information. But any things that you're seeing, or do you have any of the supportive services around visits? Dale, it looks like you're ready to jump in. Oh, Wendy.
Yeah, sorry. You can go ahead.
Go, Wendy. No, go ahead.
Okay, so this visiting project, it's actually called Wonderland of Hope, and we collaborate with other agencies in the community, and then we've also partner with the Kentucky Social Welfare Foundation. They've helped us financially fund this program. But as far as wraparound services, we offer through one of the agencies in the community contacted me and wanted to help support. And she is a licensed clinician, so she comes in and actually does therapy with the inmates. She also can offer it to inmates. She does therapy with the incarcerated people as well as their family. She can offer it to them. Do they always take it? No, but it's there if they want it. For the incarcerated people, there are group sessions available as well as one-on-one. There's parenting classes with Wonderland of Hope, and then my parenting sessions, which aren't really different. The parenting classes are nurturing parenting for families with substance use disorder. And then the parenting sessions are kind of more laid back. They write letters to their kids and I mail those later. And we just kind of, I'll pick something about child development or reading, just something that is in our early steps program is what I kind of go by because that's what I did before. And that'll be the topic. I work a lot with the recovery cells because in our jail we have a male recovery cell and a female recovery cell, and that's basically who this program is for. Parenting classes are offered to general population as well, but everything else is for the recovery cells only right now. But we're working towards expanding that a little bit.
Thank you, Wendy. Dale, I think we're ready for you now.
No, I mean, I'm not, don't quote me, I'm not 100%, but I think we have social workers and counselors for that. If a kid acts out before or after a visit, but this is my personal opinion. I feel like kids should have a say because they're entitled to their emotions, they're entitled to their feelings. So basically, if you make a kid do something they're not in what's name, they use basically wash away their feelings or what they're entitled to, because you never know, it might be a deeper root of something else that don't want them to go to visit that person, or they have a reaction after they visit that person that's incarcerated. So I really feel like we should work on getting to the root of the situation if a kid does act out, because it could be deeper and bigger than just going to visit a loved one incarcerated. So I'm a firm believer there's always something bigger than what is on surface level.
Yeah, that's a good point to be able to dig a little deeper. And do you have anything to add, Mr. Woosley, about wraparound or like services before or after visits?
I was just trying to think. I can't remember ever having that situation, or at least not being presented with it. But we do have connections here in the community through Communicare that if someone did have that need, that we can connect them with here locally. So, and I think in most rural areas, they probably have something through their local Communicare that can help in that situation.
Thank you all for those ideas. I think we've got time for one more question. And so I know we have a lot of people who are on today's call who are interested in making an impact in their community. One of the takeaways that we learned or felt we heard from people was about how many different approaches communities can take, how it can look so different. There can be lots of different ways to approach this issue and still have an impact that's positive. But maybe can you all just share what some of your takeaways are from when you all were getting started, or what you would recommend that people try and tackle, or how they might approach somebody to get things underway? And I know you all are doing a lot of amazing work, but I think several of you shared that you'd started out with small projects or just like ready to jump in and try it. So what advice do you have for folks?
I go. Listen, I'm a firm believer in this, and this is just how I live life. Like, if you want to make an impact and you want to make a change in your community, don't never think it's got to be perfect. I'm a firm believer in done is better than perfect. I feel like if you just get started, the right people will come along the way, and God will put the right people in your place to help you make things happen because you're doing the right thing and you'll make an impact. But if it's always got to be perfect, it'll never get started. So we started in Starbucks with just me, Amy, and another woman, Krista, and we didn't really know where we was going, but we got started, and then the community just started picking up, and right people start falling in our place, and the right people started helping us out, and now we are actually serving more than hundreds of kids with the One Just Robinson Foundation. But if we never got started, we always feel like it had to be perfect, then we know what we'd be doing right here. We won't be talking to you right here today.
Thank you, Dale.
I don't know that I can really offer advice. I'm still learning quite a bit, you know, and I still have quite a ways to go before I get this program where I really want it to be. But I can offer some things that I've learned. I've learned so much. I can't even begin to touch on all of it. But I have learned that everybody's doing their best. You know, 99% of these incarcerated people that I'm working with are there due to a poor choice or poor choices because of their drug addiction. And we just have to remember that nobody wakes up one day and decides, I'm going to be a drug addict today. So I have to keep that in the back of my mind and really work to advocate for incarcerated people, because there's not a lot of people that do that.
Thank you, Wendy. Any closing comments, Mr. Woosley?
I'll just say, I think in most cases that if someone reaches out to their jailer, they'll find that it's fairly easy to make that connection. But I will also offer that being in the position I'm in, I have that connection with all the jailers in the state. So if anyone ever needs any assistance with connecting with the jailer in your area, I'd be happy to help you with that if you need that.
Thank you for that generous offer. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for taking the time to come and share. Thank you, Tiffany, for joining us too, and juggling childcare and a conference call. That's pretty impressive. We appreciate your time, everybody who joined today to listen in as well. But I'm going to turn it over to Crystal, who's going to wrap it up for us.
Thanks, Tara. It sounds like there's already so much amazing work going on and being done in Kentucky to support parents and families that have been impacted by incarceration. So hopefully you all have captured some meaningful takeaways that you can bring to your own community. Thank you so much again, like Tara said, to our panel for taking some time to share your strategies and sentiments with us. And thank you so much to Ann Eason with the Kentucky Welfare Foundation again for being here and just for making all this work possible. Again, if you all would like to take a look at that report, Mara's been really great at putting the link in the chat, so you can find that on our website or down in the chat below. And we appreciate you all so much for taking your time today to join us, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.